to another action-packed show full of MotoGP news from around the world, what happened this week, and joining us, as always, from South Africa, very renowned, very well-known, Donovan Fourie.
Sup?
Sup?
Well, after that intro you just gave me, I'm like, I don't quite know what to say. You know, like, I'm a bit helped up. Oh God, everyone's looking at me. Hi.
Hey Don, how was your week, mate?
We had fun. Two interesting things happened. We rode the new Suzuki GSX 8T. Now, Suzuki, I think 2 years ago or so, brought out this new 800cc twin motor that they've put in. They put in one of their V-Stroms. They built like a naked bike. They built a sort of a super bike thing. They really are kind of milking this. And now they've got these two retro-looking bikes. One's called the 8T. One's called the 8TT. The 8T is more sort of naked retro. The 8TT's got a bit of a bikini fairing. But what is so interesting about those things is how they look so good, you know, compared to a lot of the modern bikes. This whole retro style, and the Japanese are very, very good at styling. There's not that many Japanese. I mean, think back. There's not that many Japanese bikes that are really ugly. It's like far and few between. The Europeans tend to get a little bit out there with some of their styling, but the Japanese tend to sort of, you know, keep it quite tight, good styling. And this bike looks amazing. And we did this sort of idea of biking where your ride doesn't start when you're on the bike and you're riding. Your ride starts before that. You know, you're kitting up, you're getting ready to go, you walk towards your bike, you see your bike. And when you've got a bike that just looks fantastic, and you see it, and that looks fantastic, your ride is instantly better. You're in a better mood, better frame of mind, and the whole ride is improved right there and then in that sort of small moment. So, yeah, the Suzuki 8T looks amazing. It's a great motorcycle to ride, and it just how having a good-looking bike improves the ride immensely.
Yeah. That sounds really cool. And you said two things happened. What's the other thing that happened?
So Thursday night we had this shop opening. It's called Nitro Workwear or something like that. And a friend of mine invited. It wasn't actually a biking event. So it's workwear. You've got like these PPE boots and these goggles and like tools, and you know, it's sort of, we called it a man cave shop. So what happens is, if you've got an occasion that requires your girlfriend, wife, whoever, to buy you a present, like a birthday, Christmas, or that, all she needs to do is go to that shop, walk in, buy anything. It's like a man walking into like a bath soap shop, you know, one of those soap bath salt boutique
Bed,
things.
Bath and Beyond,
when you walk in, you walk in, you haven't got a clue what any of it is. And you go to the shop, the person behind the desk, you go, I need to buy a gift for my girlfriend. No problem, sir. Use this. You buy anything and it all works. It's the equivalent of that of men. You walk in and just buy anything. Fine, and it's all great. But I think the sort of exactly. The co-owner or partner or somehow affected is the guy who does Brad Binder's or Brad and Darren Binder's apparel, and he's a close friend of theirs. So it was a small invite-only little party, and the two Binders were there. And I haven't seen the Binders in a long time. And normally when I do see them, it's at a bit of a public event, and it gets tricky. You know, there's a million people and every single one of them. And this was so awesome because it was just this close-knit community. Most of the people there knew the Binders. So it wasn't like they were there on public display. They were just there, you know, taking part in the event. It was absolutely brilliant. And they were just the usual good guys. Really, really nice, really like personable, really sweet, really just really. In South Africa, we use the term lekker oaks. Because that's what they are. They're just nice people. Yeah. And it was just great. And it was fun talking to them, fun spending time around them, just ordinary, decent people.
Hey Don, I mean, I had a look. See, there's not much happening in MotoGP currently. Obviously, we're working towards the end of the month, in which about 2 weeks' time, it's going to be the testing events right into the racing in Thailand. I think the only thing that really came out this week was the two Pramac boys, Jack and Toprak, doing a bit of cleaning up.
Remind me, what was that?
There was footage of the two guys helping the guys out at the back of, I don't know, some stadium, just doing the bins. And so Toprak jumped on the front there. He was driving the little van. I mean, Jack was in the back of the gloves, and he was cleaning out the bins and putting in new bin liners and wrapping it up and doing a pretty professional job. I was wondering if he's done that before.
I wonder also because, geez, I don't know, maybe it'll work. You know, he's got a bit of a sideline job. He's been moonlighting. You know, Jack's got kids and all that now. You know, MotoGP only goes so far. So you know, during the week, in the evenings when you know there's no racing on, he climbs on the back of a bin lorry and.
MotoGP is really it's a combination of these really amazing characters in the racing through the years, isn't it?
That's good. That's exactly correct. It's become more of that. I mean, back in the day, the really early days of racing, it was about the races and who won, if you know what I mean. And there wasn't a lot of sort of publicized stuff. There, you know, in those days, there was a little bit of stuff on TV. Maybe the news would cover it slightly. This is now early days of Grand Prix racing, and a little bit in magazines, a little bit in newspapers. And you sort of saw who won and what sort of happened, and that's really it. And what bikes they were riding. There wasn't much kind of behind the scenes sort of things. And the crowds in those days were massive because you never really got to experience it, you know. But again, they all sat in grandstands, and there you saw these faceless people in helmets on these motorbikes screaming around, and it was utterly spectacular, but not personable. You know what I mean? Later on in sort of the 60s and 70s, it started picking up a little bit more. And let's lead us on to what I think was the first person who kind of changed Grand Prix racing from merely riding motorbikes to the more kind of overall package. I would say that's Barry Sheene.
Mike Hailwood?
What do you think? Mike Hailwood and them again. No, Mike Hailwood and them again were nice people, Agostini and all of that, but they gave nice interviews and all of that, but you mostly learned with them, it was more about what they're doing on track. So what did they ride? What did they win? What happened in the race? As far as personalities go, I mean, they had their little moments and all that, but they were never quite drew the public's imagination beyond their riding, if that makes sense. Barry Sheene was the first person, and this is a big deal, first person to go mainstream, to become a mainstream celebrity. In other words, he wasn't just on motorcycle magazines and newspapers. He would go on the front of like gossip magazines and things, you know, tabloids, things like that. He became a mainstream celebrity. So people who weren't into motorcycling started finding out who Barry Sheene was. He was this really good looking, Cockney, you know, down to, you know, to the people, not a sort of snobbish kind of thing. He was one of the people, and he was funny, and he was exuberant, and he was characterful, and just the stuff he sort of did.
Yeah, and because at the time you had a Hunt. Hunt was in Formula One, wasn't he? And he was his big time celebrity, and the equivalent in motorbikes was Barry Sheene, wasn't it?
There was, and I mean, little things that sort of really captured the public's imagination. 1975, before he won a world title, he raced at Daytona, the famous Daytona 200, you know, where they used part of the banked oval. He was going along the banks at 280 kilometers per hour. His tire exploded. His rear tire exploded, and he was thrown off the motorcycle. And I remember in those days, you just had very plain leathers, and you just had sort of ordinary helmet, and they didn't have anything there. And he ended up with massive injuries, huge injuries. I mean, he broke, I don't know how many, it was something like 12 bones or something ridiculous. And already then, that was like, that went to the media, and everyone with this, you know, Barry Sheene in hospital with, whoa. And already that kind of caught some global kind of attention. And then the sort of comments about it came out. The one journalist in particular, I think or rather with him at the time, I think it might have been Steve Parrish, went and visited him in the hospital. And he's obviously in this bed, and he's got his leg up on a sling, and he's got his arm up on a sling, and he's just casts everywhere and just everything. And he sat down next to his bed. He said, "Barry, how are you?" And Barry replied, he said, "Well, I've got a broken femur, a broken arm, 6 broken ribs, and several compressed vertebrae. But apart from that, I'm fine."
Yeah, it's almost like the Aussies would say, "Should be right, mate."
Yeah, but there were more things like afterwards they asked him, how bad was it? He replied, "If I were a racehorse, I'd have been shot."
Yeah, I'd actually remember that coming out at. I think I might have seen some of the footage here coming down at 170 miles an hour, like you say, with very, very little protection compared to the modern day guys, breaking just about everything in his body. But those guys they were tough as nails, and back then people died. That's not like today. People died quite a bit more in Formula One and all that. Yeah.
Barry Sheene and Barry Sheene was actually Agostini were the two who kind of got the Isle of Man TT taken off the Grand Prix calendar, and they just said it's not racing, it's suicide. It's just not. Sorry, there was one more. I just saw another quote by it. When they asked him about like the hospital stay, what was it like? He said, well, his biggest complaints were the nurses wouldn't let him have a cigarette, and he's missing out on a suntan.
Yeah, first they say 4 cigarettes were still healthy.
Yeah, there was he used to. I don't know if this is correct. He drilled a hole in his helmet, so that like when you had to put your helmet on, but before everybody sort of cleared off, he could have one more cigarette, through the thing. Just interestingly, so he had that big crash, and he was in hospital for ages. Look, this is 1975, broken femur. Aldeguer's currently got a broken femur, and look how long he's been out. Broken arm. This arm was broken both in the front and the top, or 2 different places, as far as I know. 6 broken ribs and several compressed vertebrae. That's huge. And he was back on a bike racing 7 weeks later. They gave him the nickname the Bionic Man from that.
Yeah, these guys had a hunger in them, but they just absolutely loved what they were doing. It wasn't like today. And then after Barry, what happened then? It went all quiet, did it?
But yet, despite that, this big crash happened in 1975, and yet he still went on to win 2 world championships, 1976 and 1977. And people are saying that, he would have won more. His fans say, at least, he would have won more, were it not for the injuries. The injuries obviously affected him. But then came along what was Kenny Roberts. And there was this great rivalry between Sheene and Roberts that it was great because it was a strong rivalry. The two went at each other properly on the track, but they sort of respected each other. There was that famous scene where I don't remember it exactly, where Roberts and Sheene were sort of dicing, and Sheene got ahead and then reached around behind his back and pulled a zap at Kenny Roberts. And a few people are like, oh, that's a bit nasty, that's a bit, but actually it was a bit of a fun, it was actually a fun thing, the two knew. He was joking with him, going, here we go, I'm ahead now. So it was actually just a fun gesture. That was Sheene, that's exactly how he was. Now, Kenny Roberts, on the other hand, he was more renowned for, he wasn't the big explosive personality that Sheene was. He was a lot more sort of your typical kind of a little bit demure sort of racer. Serious racer, the athlete sort of thing. And he's more renowned for his achievements than any sort of personality. He won after Sheene 78, 79, and 80. The thing about him is, though, he's the first American to come over and win the world championship in Europe. And remember, it was a big thing in those days. You arrive on tracks you don't know, you're riding bikes you don't know, with people you don't know, and the whole environment, the whole everything, it shakes you up. Even today, non-European riders, when they get there, are at a big disadvantage because, the whole culture, the whole everything is very, very different. But he won. He came out first time on the bike. He won. He beat the great Barry Sheene. And I will say that I think Kenny Roberts is one of the best riders Grand Prix ever had. You just look at his career and his sort of context of where he was and all of that. He was one of the best riders. He was absolutely amazing, but not a personality. You know what I mean? He didn't give big flamboyant interviews and all of that. And then he sort of paved the way for that whole American invasion that happened after that. The next one was obviously Freddie Spencer. Again, great rider, absolutely brilliant. Also, one of the he at the time was the youngest ever race winner, which then Marquez took over after that. But difference is again, he arrived from America, and on these bikes he didn't know, bikes and people he didn't know, tracks he didn't know, and was the youngest ever winner. So again, huge achievement. And that led on to Freddie Spencer, then Eddie Lawson, who again, great rider, but not much of a personality. And then after that was the famous Rainey versus Schwantz rivalry, which also was, I won't say it was mainstream. I mean, the way Sheene was kind of the mainstream, everybody knew about it. Whereas the rivalry between Schwantz and Rainey in motorcycle circles is absolutely legendary. And these two people sort of seemed to care more about beating each other than actually winning. The fact that beating the other one meant you win was like a sideline thing. It's like, okay, you only finished fourth in the race. Yeah, but Kevin or Wayne finished fifth, so fine. You know what I mean? It was sort of like one of those. And it even got to the stage where when Rainey was injured, Schwantz won that year. And then after that, just didn't seem to care anymore. And it is sort of documented. I think he even said that, look, after Rainey was out, he was like, well, what am I doing here? You know, I'm here to race Wayne, and he's not here, so why should I hang about? That in itself is a bunch of personality there. And you look at those old videos. I know you watch them on the MotoGP pages. They sometimes show them. Those old races on those 500s that used to buck and buckle, and the way those two went at each other, it was just ruthless. They had great respect for each other off the track. Like they didn't want to kind of, it's not like they were, you know, at each other's throats constantly. But on the track, they were such hard riders. They were each one was so utterly determined to beat the other. And you watch the way ride. It was spectacular to watch. And anyway, so that led on to the Duin era. I'm gonna go across to Australia and sitting over here. So the Duin years, how exciting were those?
I'll tell you what. I was a little bit of a personal story. Back in 1997, Mick Duin was in South Africa, and I was working at Supersport Studios. And I was a guy fortunate enough to talk to Mick, and I've been watching him MotoGP, obviously big following back then already. And I was so excited to meet Mick Duin, and I got him in studio and I sat him down and we did some promo clips for the channel. I mean, afterwards, obviously a quick catch up. I mean, it's Mick Duin. It's not every day you get to meet Mick Duin. And they say sometimes you shouldn't meet your heroes, and unfortunately Mick was like that. I got his signature, which I was quite happy about, but it was an interesting situation. I must say, in hindsight, it was at the time when he had his issues with his leg, and he possibly, he had a bad day just going through.
Yeah, you're right. Look, Duin was a nice guy, but not much of a kind of a personality, as it were. But he was renowned for his achievements on track, which were spectacular, especially when you consider the fact that his injury, that leg injury of his, he broke his leg to such an extent that the doctors in the hospital actually wanted to amputate it. It wasn't getting enough blood, and everything was just messed up, and it just wasn't healing. And they're like, nope, got to make it go. Dr. Costa, who was the Grand Prix doctor, took him out of the hospital, put him, I think, either the ambulance or into the clinic, the Grand Prix clinic, and actually joined the two legs together with an artery between them. So the one leg fed the other leg blood, and then cast the two together. And he had to lie for weeks with his two legs kind of like that. And it was so bad. It changed the week. He didn't have proper use of his one leg. And he had to completely change his whole riding style, to make this leg work. The thumb brake came about because of him, because his foot couldn't push it. And the fact that he had to change his riding style completely. Leave aside the trauma of, that injury and that, but he had to change his entire riding style in order to cater for his leg. And then went on to absolutely dominate 5 world championships. Is utterly astounding. But he wasn't a big personality.
No, it was an interesting personality, but interesting. And right after him, now we're heading towards 97, 98. But from memory, Mick Duin was never on track with Rossi, was he?
No, it was not the year 2000, I think it was. He crashed. He did that big crash in a res, hit into one of the signboards, and was just. And I think just after that, he was like, okay, I called time. I've had enough. And then it was after that, his Duin's team was handed over to Rossi the following year. Remember the famous Jeremy Burgess and all of those lot were handed over to Rossi, who, as far as I remember, got Mick Duin's bike So from the year before. So Rossi, when he rode at first, he wasn't on a factory bike. He was on an older bike, essentially a satellite. And he won his first title, which was a year later. So he started racing in 2000 during Crash 99, Rossi started riding in 2000. He won his first races in 2000, finished second in the championship. That's on a year-old bike with a satellite team. And then won the following year. Remember, Repsol Honda was still the factory team. Rossi was on a satellite team and won the championship in his second year. So really, it was he had a fast satellite bike, but it was a satellite bike. But that came to where we returned to sort of where Barry Sheene was. Rossi was the first person since Barry Sheene to become a kind of a big mainstream personality. And okay, you people always saying, no rider is bigger than MotoGP, but you look at the social media outlets and you look at the fans, more people follow Valentino Rossi than they follow MotoGP. And if you walk into a restaurant with just ordinary people and you mention MotoGP, a lot of them will go, "What's MotoGP?" I'm like, "No, it's the Grand Prix series." "Oh, what?" But if you mention Valentino Rossi, "Oh, yeah, he's that bike guy." Yeah, of course they know that. Yeah. So he was a huge personality.
Absolutely. And I think with the advent of Rossi, what really changed it is it was an opportunity for MotoGP to start selling merchandise, because the merchandise that came out of Rossi was unreal.
Well, yeah, he had so many fans. He had more fans than any other Grand Prix rider has ever had and has ever had since. Marquez just doing glorious things on track. He does not have the following that Rossi. He still does not have the following that even Rossi had, or even still has. But again, it's all just personality based, and Rossi's personality was so big and so out there that it just sort of overshadowed even his racing success. So it was that combination of winning on track and being this big sort of personality. And people look at that. You want to know the person. People look at other people, and you want to see somebody you relate to, someone you enjoy.
I was part of a group of guys that used to do track days and that sort of thing, and we'd meet up on Sunday afternoons and we watch MotoGP. And I remember them getting really upset with me because I wanted to watch a 125s and nobody wanted to watch a 125s or 250s. It was just a 500s, and I was like, no, keep quiet. I want to watch a 125s. There's this kid there. His name is Rossi, and he's going to be a world champion one day. Nobody believed it. So I'm the OG follower, I believe, in my own little mind. I'm the OG. And then I think it was on a 250. All of a sudden there was a donkey on track one day.
Actually, it was actually before that. Rossi won the 1997 125cc World Championship, and he on the victory lap he got dressed up as Robin Hood, and he put on this ridiculous homemade hat and this ridiculous outfit, and everyone went, what is this? What is this? And that was effectively the first proper post-race celebration that we've ever seen. That was in 1997. And again, everyone went, "Wait, what is this?" And yes, this long. Remember, he had that long hair, and there's this lanky, goofy-looking Italian guy with long hair in this ridiculous homemade Robin Hood outfit with this big smile on his face. And everyone went, "What is this?" You know what I mean? You're supposed to pull wheelies and wave at the crowd, and and that was the first one.
At best.
Well, hang on. No, I'm gonna actually go one further than that. Do you remember the Claudia Schiffer stunt?
Yeah, because I think Max Biaggi was trying to date Claudia Schiffer at the time or something.
He was. There was a rumor going around that he was dating Naomi Campbell, and at that stage Biaggi was a big 250 star, but he was known as kind of a bit of a play. He had the sort of stigma as kind of a playboy, a rock star, kind of hanging out in the big leagues. So to sort of as a bit of a mockery, and actually I found out some funny stuff about this. So what actually happened is Rossi's manager got hold of the management of Claudia Schiffer to actually ask how possible would it be to have Claudia Schiffer at one of the races and then come out and pretend to be Rossi's girlfriend. You know what I mean? There's a bit of a kind of it turned out, no, it was quite expensive. It turns out Claudia Schiffer's not a cheap date. So what they decided to do instead is they got this blow-up doll with a blonde wig, And they put it on the back of Rossi's bike and he rode on the track with this tall with a blonde wig. And the idea was, this is Claudia, you know, if Biaggi's racing, if Biaggi's dating Naomi Campbell, then I'm dating Claudia Schiffer, you know. And that also might have been the start of the, you know, the Rossi Biaggi, because I'm pretty sure Biaggi did not like that. I'm pretty sure. And that might have been the start of the sort of Rossi Biaggi sort of thing. But then you said in 250 we got
the Roman emperor.
Yeah, exactly. And then, as you said, when he was racing in 250s, we got the Osvaldo the chicken hoax, actually.
I believe it was a story of Rossi and some of his friends sitting in a restaurant coming up with that.
Well, all of Rossi's ideas, I mean, they had a pizzeria in Tavullia, his hometown, and they all used to sit there at this pizzeria, and, you know, the owner was a good friend of theirs and all of that. And they all used to sit around and come up with these stupid gags, which is sort of where, you know, they were very kind of authentic. They were very cheap and stupid, but they were very kind of authentic. And there was this rumor going around that Rossi had this secret sponsor who was a poultry farmer or something like that, named Osvaldo or something. And it led to this whole kind of big thing. Anyway, and he ended up putting this chicken on the back of his bike. And I believe everybody, there was a silly rumor going around. They started just for the fun of it, and people were trying to find out who this famous chicken sponsor is sponsoring Ross. And it was all made up. And I think there was even a case where they got it was the owner of that pizzeria to kind of pose as this huge chicken magnate, big sponsor for Rossi. And it was all absolute rubbish.
And I think there was in 2002, he got pulled over. And he got ticketed in Sepang for going too fast at the track, after the track.
It was actually in Mugello. So there were two. There was Sepang, he got just pulled over for just speeding, for just going too fast. And then there was actually at Mugello, which is the fast track. And that was in 2002. Now, MotoGP had just moved from 500 two-strokes to the 990 four-strokes. Rossi was riding that RCV, that glorious V5 four-stroke. And the speeds they were achieving down Mugello were just out of this world. It was much bigger than anything. I mean, they're faster now, but at that time they were much bigger than anything anyone had ever seen. So the joke was that Rossi crossed the finish line, and then a police cop stood up and pulled him over and gave him the speeding ticket.
And but there was this water shear moment, and I remember it. I remember it so well. 2004, Rossi at Pekisa in South Africa.
Wow.
He left Honda and he was on the Yamaha, and he was battling Max Biaggi at the time, moved across. He was on the Honda, which was the dominant bike, and it was a ding-dong battle right to the end. And I still maintain Rossi rode the wheels of that bike. And I remember at the end of it, he parked the bike on the barrier and he sat down in front of the bike and he kissed that bike. And I still get goosebumps thinking about that moment. And it seared Rossi in my mind. It was a blue bike. I think it was sponsored by Gulwa, and he wasn't supposed to. I think one of his cigarette companies wasn't allowed to have it on. So all his bike said was go on the side. And man, I remember that so well. And I remember a story of you actually at the time. You forgot your pass or something and you couldn't get into the racetrack.
It wasn't quite that, no. I ran out of money. I went down early and I misjudged. So we were driving a big lorry. We used to take this, we had this 11-ton lorry that we used to drive down. I mean, I was, I think, 19 or 20 at the time, you know. And I skipped school on Friday and drove down early on Friday. No one else could come. You know, there was a group of us. No one else could go down. But I left stupid early in the morning because I wanted to watch first Friday practice at Pekisa. And it was about a 4-hour drive to Pekisa. And what I didn't think about, I took some money with me, you know, enough to kind of get by. And everybody was only coming through on the Saturday morning. And so I had enough money, you know, to keep me going. What I hadn't taken into account is on the way to Pekisa, there are 2 toll gates. And what I didn't think about was how expensive toll gates are for trucks, for lorries. So I had my wallet with enough money to buy me food, and I was going to sleep with the bag. And suddenly I get to this thing, and they're like, okay, sir, that'll be this much. Wait, what? So I paid the first one, and I sort of looked and sort of said, okay, I'm going to have to skim tonight. I'll have to just buy some cheap food and cheap all of that and, whatever have you. And then they got to the second toll gate, and luckily I had just enough money. And when I left there, I had 2 rand and 15 cents, which is
About a Coke in the day.
yeah, that wouldn't even buy you a Coke. It would hardly buy you a Coca-Cola, and that's all I had. Luckily, the lorry had enough diesel in it, so I drove all the way down there, and I walked around with 2 rand 15 cents in my pocket to last. And this is now Friday morning. That's to last me until about Saturday afternoon. Not even enough to buy a single Coca-Cola. But the media center had free waters and things, but there was no food. Food was a thing. And eventually that evening, after having not eaten all day, that evening after all the practices, I drove the truck into town and went and looked at all these little garages and cafes, and I managed to find for 2 rand was this little packet of biscuits called My First Cookie, with these 3 tiny little biscuits inside it, cookies inside it. I managed to find that for 2 rand. And I went back to the track, and I was actually sitting on the pit, and I was watching. In fact, this was 2002, so yeah, I would have been turning 20, about 20 years old that time. And the big MotoGP bikes had come out for the first time. I remember sitting there. It's now going dark. All the mechanics are busy working on the bikes, and I was watching the mechanics working on Rossi's bike in pit lane. They had the bike out, and they were there working, and I was sitting on the pit wall just watching them. So it was blissful, eating 3 little My First cookies, which was the only food I'd had that entire day, and drinking a complimentary bottle of water from the media center.
Moving forward, I remember 2007 at the Malaysian GP. I think it was the last one for the season. I'm speaking under correction here. And then as Rossi finished off, he jumped off a bike and someone gave him a broom because he had a clean sweep.
It was something, I can't remember where it was. there was a ton of these, and they had to sort of start sweeping up. There was Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, which was the 7th world title.
Oh, yeah.
As 100th victory, they brought out that giant sort of banner showing all his different victories. And that banner actually ended up in the sort of middle town square of Tavullia, his hometown. They put it up there against one of the walls.
Yeah.
And it stayed, I don't know if it's still there, it's probably rotten by now. But it stayed up there for many, many years. And Tavullia became the tiny little town of Tavullia, which is near Misano, down at the coastal sort of area of Italy. Became a bit of a tribute to Rossi. And you're forgetting one, by the way. This was still 1998 at Jerez. And this was not pre-planned. Rossi was riding along in one of the practices, and he saw a porta potty next to one of the corners, and on the slowdown lap, he pulled off the track, leaned his bike against one of the tire wall, and then ran up to the portalotti and climbed inside.
Yeah, I remember that because people were like, is it a stunt? Is it coming out? Because he just started pulling this off, and the commentators were going, what is happening? And he needed a toilet break very urgently. But I think after that, they said to him, we're not allowed to do that again. But
it all had some sort of private meaning, and again, it was what made it so much fun was it was him and his mates sitting in their pizzeria, coming up with all these silly sort of ideas, and that's again, it just made it so utterly special, Rossi was able to. He was such a kind of real personality. And as you pointed out, there was that 2004 where he won on that Yamaha. Now, when he moved from Honda to Yamaha, at that stage, I think it was Biaggi who said you can't win on any bike except a Honda. And at that stage, the bike had barely taken any podiums until that stage. Yamaha was way off. And he had this sensational move to Yamaha. And everyone went, wait, what? And even in that, people believed that it would take him a year to maybe get used to the bike. Instead, he won in his first race, and he was 35 seconds ahead of the next Yamaha, which I think was Norik Abe, followed closely by Carlos Checa, which I know, these are not nowhere riders. They were 35 seconds off Rossi. And again, the way he celebrated was this, it wasn't a silly thing, but it was human. He parked the bike against a tire wall by himself, no big crowds, sat down in front of the bike, did this with his hand, and just sat there for a while. And it was this real human moment of where, look what I've done. Then he got up, kissed the bike. Again, another beautiful human moment, climbed on the bike and then carried on. and you just the way everybody was able to connect with that is just kind of what made Rossi the sort of big sensational personality.
But it went deeper than that, because when Rossi signed for Yamaha, he didn't know, but Yamaha had pretty much run out of money. I believe they only had money for 3 races. That's all they had allocated, but nobody ever told Rossi. Right. And he became so successful. But obviously, I mean, to this day, Yamaha is a force to be reckoned with. But from memory, Yamaha had 3 races in the bag. And they said, well, let's see what happens. I mean, Rossi just so dominated that the funding came in from corporate Japan. And here we are today with Fabio Quartararo on the bike.
I don't know how true that is. Yeah, maybe. I mean, we've heard rumors about something. Whatever it was, the MotoGP project was in trouble. The bike was way behind. Those Hondas were just utterly dominating. And at that stage, Ducati had come into the mix also. And were also starting to outperform them. So, you know, it was a problem. I mean, Yamaha was in dire straits. And 2 things happened in 2004. They got Rossi. And I think kind of the Rossi was a last-ditch effort. There was David Bravio, who kind of signed that across. And I think this was... Because I'm pretty sure that whatever happened, the Yamaha executives were not happy. They were spending a fortune and they were looking a bit ridiculous. So that was a last-ditch effort. It was also when Furuzawa, who was that famous Japanese engineer, introduced the cross-plane motor with the sort of irregular firing order. And I think, as far as I know, it was Rossi was the one who pushed for that motor, as apart from the other motors, which made more horsepower and felt faster. But Rossi was the one who said, no, I don't want, no, not those ones. Give me the slower motor because it's easier to ride. He was more interested in corner speed, the ability to do corner speed and get drive out of corners than he was in top speed. And that really is what changed everything.
That cross-plane crank then boiled down into the Yamaha, which came to the streets in the R1, I think, in 2009, 2010.
Correct.
And after Rossi, I mean, he did all these things. Who followed up on Rossi?
Well, to this day, I don't think anybody did it as well as Rossi. Lorenzo had a few pretty good ones. I mean, he did his moonwalk thing. Especially, I think it was Laguna Seca, if I remember correctly, where he did the spaceman thing and walked into the gravel trap and put his flag down. It's that Lorenzo land flag of his, and put it down. I mean, those were pretty good. Well, my favorite Lorenzo one, though, was at Le Mans. And as far as quite obviously, I'm pretty sure he had won the race. I don't remember what year this was. But he went to Le Mans, you go down the main straight, there's a fast corner, a bit of a chicane, and you go over a hill. And as you go down the other side, he stopped the bike there. And he actually stopped on the MotoGP track turns off, but the Le Mans 24-hour track, the long one, carries on straight. And he went onto the Le Mans 24-hour straight, which is not used. And he stopped the bike, and there somebody had a chair laid out and a box of popcorn. He sat down on this chair, put a box of popcorn as that, started eating the popcorn, and was watching the giant screen. That was sort of showing half the track where to go. Giant screens were quite a new thing in those sort of days. And he sat there eating popcorn, watching this giant screen on all the... I don't know, that was a lot of fun also.
These days, it just seems like things have changed, man. It's not the same. It doesn't feel as organic. You don't have these little tidbits of interesting things happening post-race. Thinking back in recent years, there was Marc Márquez when he moved into the Gresini team, and there was his post-race celebrations, and you could see him celebrating at afterwards, and they were playing in the back, guess who's back, and because of his fans, obviously his fans were there, but there's no props, and just the theatre and the drama, and just that organic feel, the spontaneity is gone, man. And thinking back in recent years, we had Jorge Martin win the World Championship 2 years ago. And he's got this Terminator thing. I can't remember what it's called. And it was just absolutely cringeworthy, him stepping out with some fake makeup out of a booth and eyes breaking up in the air. It was cringeworthy, man. Yeah,
so what's kind of happened recently is that kind of Dorna, well, it's not called Dorna anymore. Liberty Media has taken it over and they're changing the name a little bit in that. But anyway, well, MotoGP has sort of gotten involved with the post-race, the celebrations, particularly the championship winning celebrations. They do this whole big kind of show. They'll have big screens and props and fireworks and music playing and all sorts of stuff, and it becomes more like a kind of a cinematographed, choreographed theatre production of sort. Which, okay, I'm not 100, I'm not totally against. I mean, we want to show MotoGP is above all entertainment. It's the more entertaining MotoGP as a whole is, the more people watch it, the more successful the whole thing is, the better it is. So I haven't got a problem with that. But as you said, it's the original celebrations with Rossi and his with his mates in a pizzeria coming up with these very stupid ideas. And these very terrible costumes, but it was, it was from the heart. You know what I mean? It was a little gag by them, and it was real. You know what I mean? Yeah. These celebrations where they kind of for their grandiose and all of that, they kind of lack that personal feel. This it feels like it's put together by a bunch of people sitting in a boardroom with clipboards. And they're all brainstorming, and yes, we're going to do this, and and it's a little, The only exception I'm going to say recently was Bezzecchi, who's a protege of Rossi. He got proposed to his Aprilia. If you remember in that last race, and he stopped and he brought a ring out. And again, that was not a big choreograph. That was a real little thing, and that was kind of fun. You know what I mean? And it was real. And then they topped it up again after that with that whole marriage when he re-signed his contract. That I thought was pretty cool. But I mean, the other stuff. A lot of it is down to the riders themselves. They need to themselves come up with these ideas and come up with all of them. And a lot of them just don't have quite the sort of charisma that Rossi had, or the sort of showmanship and all that kind of stuff. It's
when there's trackside props and there's people on it with lights and stuff, it's not that organic feel anymore. It's obviously staged. It's big production. Me and you, we understand racetracks. You just don't put stuff around the racetrack like that. So when I see that, I'm like, come on, it's not real. But in the heydays of the Rossi and those guys, when they did these things, it was off the cuff. They had one guy run up there with a chicken suit or whatever, and it was just fun, man. And I do miss that. I do miss that.
It's like when they had. It's like going around. Oh, I've just won the championship. Oh, look at that! There happen to be a dozen screens over there, all beautifully programmed. It's just what a coincidence. You know what I mean? It's, you're right. It is just very staged. And
absolutely.
I'm okay, but I would like to see more of the riders themselves coming up with fun, goofy stuff. There was the toilet one in Rossi, the tickets at Mugello, the police stopping it. It wasn't difficult, fake police, or I can't remember we got real policemen or fake policemen, but just fun. No. I realize not everybody's in that has that sort of same sense of kind of theatre and goofiness, but it would be fun. It would really aid MotoGP, and we go back to what we originally said, which is personalities. Having these cool, groovy personalities, having fun and doing fun stuff.
And I'll be honest with you, I do look forward to what I'm seeing Jack and Toprak doing right now. There seems to be a little bit of charismatic synergy, energy there. They're having fun on it. I do think keep an eye on these guys this season. I think it might just be fun.
I'm reminded a little while ago of when they had these social media questions, and somebody asked Rossi. They said to him, "What is your net worth?" And Rossi didn't understand. See, what is this? How much money I earn now, or how much money in total? It was just this fun thing. He's like, I don't really remember, but then it's a good number, And then they immediately went to Jack Miller and they asked him exactly the same question. What is Jack Miller's net worth? And he went, a lot less than him. A lot less. Pointed over at Rossi. And it's, again, these fun personalities. Personal thing that I remember is when Jack Miller and Brad Binder were teammates, and Binder made a big mistake and took Jack Miller out on the second corner at Aragon. And, and when they sort of stood up, both riders were okay. Binder looked very apologetic. I mean, Miller's his mates and all that. And he went up to Miller, you know, hey, look, oh, man, I'm so sorry. And Miller just took him like this, just held his arms out, gave him a big hug, and just, nah, mate, don't worry, these things happen. And it's like, wow, that's just such a, you know, it's just, you can't help but like someone like that. You can't help but support someone like that. And again, we go back to personalities, and racing matters, who wins matters.
Absolutely, Don. Hey, Don, thank you so much for sharing your insight. A bit of a different show, a bit of a slow week, and I thought we'll talk about the celebrities and the personalities in MotoGP, and you've had some good stories, and I really appreciate it.
No problem, matey. Thanks for having me on again, and it's, as always, it's good fun, and I see our channel's growing a little bit. Whether it gets big or whether it stays small, I don't mind. I just really enjoy talking about MotoGP and sharing MotoGP and having fun talking with you, mate. It's good fun.
It's always good to have you in the studio here. Hey guys, if you haven't clicked those buttons here, smash those, click and subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you next week, right here, same place. We launch every Friday. Until next week, keep the rubber side down.